2 years. I have one more year of my undergrad and then a year of grad school.
Nice. One of the most effective ways I've seen, which maybe you've already learned about, is playing music for the kids and then getting them to either draw pictures about how it makes them feel, or depending on how old they are, get them to write about it. This is an amazing just way to engage with it, or they can even talk about it, right? And I think in an ideal world, you simply present the music to them without any judgment, right? Because just as Paul was saying, the kids are going to see everything completely new and fresh. So you don't have to set anything up. You know, you could play for them Morton Lauritsen one day and Stevie Wonder the next day. And it's just, right? Who was it? Duke Ellington, who said there's good music and then the other kind of music, right? So if you just hit them with good music and then see what their honest reaction is to that, I think you'll find some really special things that happen. I have, I posted it last year on social media. I should post again. I want to set it. An elementary school class had done a version of this. They had to listen to music and then write what they felt about it. And so the teacher had played a piece I'd written called Sleep. And this fourth grader wrote, it's the most amazing review. It says, it's something like, "Sleep is the worst song I've ever heard. It's the most boring thing. Choir is so boring." It's just amazing. But it's totally pure, you know. And I've always wanted to set her words to music. Can you imagine? Dude, anyway, good luck, Kyla.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cordelia. I have a few questions, but I'm going to go with this one. What is something you wish you would have known at our age about the music industry, or just in general about life or music and any of that?
Own my copyrights. No. Invest in Apple computers. I wish somebody would have told me that in 1986. I'll tell you, if I could go back, say, and talk to my 18-year-old self, I think, you know, Paul mentioned that he was a worrier, you know, like that. I think I would go back and tell my 18-year-old self, don't worry so much. You can't possibly see how it's going to unfold, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be good. It's really going to be nice. There's going to be way more good days than bad days. And especially when it comes to music and building a career and all of that, it's like the path just unfolds. It's really extraordinary. And basically, when it comes to being a musician, it's if you show up on time, you know what you're doing, and you're easy to work with, you're going to have a great life in music. It's just going to happen. And especially at that age, you know, you've got parents telling you that music is such a terrible idea, or advisors, and, you know, and it turns out none of that's true. You just kind of, you're going down the river one way or another. You might as well enjoy the view.
That's really comforting to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cordelia.
Hi, Eric. It's an honor to be talking to you. Been a big fan since I played and screamed in Godzilla Eats Las Vegas many years ago. Awesome. So you've had a lot of experience with your virtual choirs, and then you did Big Scene California back in 2018. So you've already had these experiences of bringing together people virtually and creating musical experiences that are still connected and meaningful, even though people are separated and not in the same room together. So my question for you is, how do you create that connection out of the ether? How do you bring people's souls and hearts together? And what have you learned that you might carry forward if social distancing is the norm for much longer than we would like?
It's such a good question. So have you been a part of a virtual choir yet? Have you done it with any?
No, I get scared and then I don't. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Maybe I'll send an audition, but then I don't. But my sister participated in the Big Scene California, so it was amazing.
Nice.
So
yeah, listen, I know exactly how you feel. I've tried to join 3 of my own virtual choirs, like be a singer, and I couldn't go through with it. It was just the reason I say it is it's not a pleasant experience at all. If any of you have done a virtual choir, you're alone in a room. Nobody sounds great alone in their, in a closet trying to sing it. And especially almost all choral music, the whole reason we sing together is so that our voice isn't on its own, right? You're actively blending with people, and you can breathe when you need to breathe. And there's a sense of togetherness that you just don't get with a virtual choir until the end product, right? And then you watch and you think, how did all of that add up to be a thing? What we discovered over doing these things for years is that actually the end result, the virtual choir, is really secondary. That the juice of the project is all the time between you first announce, here's what we're going to do, and then you releasing the film. That's where the community happens. That's where it gets built. And so this time around, we had this Facebook, a Facebook group that had 22,000 people in it. And just people were endlessly positive and sharing and helping people. If anybody had a tech question, then people would leap to help them with the technology. Or if anybody had trouble learning the music, then people would help them learn the music. And it's that kind of sense that, oh, we're all in this together. It somehow weirdly builds a community, which is, at the end of the day, I think the great virtue of choirs. That of course we get together and we sing and there's this beautiful music, but it's also our family, right? You have that sense of, I always joke that if a decent sized choir, let's say 80 people, were to crash on a desert island, you'd basically have everything you needed in a society, right? Any 80 voice amateur choir is going to have lawyers and doctors and dentists and cooks and, really conservative people and really liberal people. And it's just everything you need to survive as a village. And so the emphasis has been more and more on that kind of community building, and frankly, less and less on the music part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Eric. I'm
Matt.
Matt, and it is such an honor to be talking to you. I'm so excited to actually be talking to you. I just had a question on what would be some advice from you to a student who wanted to go into composing and become a famous composer like yourself.
Don't do it. Run. So Matt, have you written anything yet? Are you composing now?
I have a little bit. I actually, my senior project, I did an arrangement of Loch Lomond for my senior project.
Nice.
So,
were you happy with it?
I was actually very happy with it. I wrote I think it was like 26 parts. So I did a full band section as well as a 4-part choir with the entire in the entire piece. So yeah.
Okay, well, maybe when it comes to advice, let's start with what will sound really like composition 101, but actually is something I wish somebody would have told me early on. And it's something I still think about every time I write a new piece. I think there's this sense that because we're creating nothing, or we're creating something from nothing, right? From thin air, that it's like this wide open field, and our minds need to be as open and creative as possible. In my experience, that's creativity killer, because you just get completely overwhelmed by possibility and you can't get 2 notes out and you're like, what do I do? I don't know. You're just, and before, when I was talking to Paul about this deep structure, part of that is the tighter the handcuffs you can put on yourself at the beginning, then you force yourself into these very difficult puzzles you have to get yourself out of. And that part of the brain that's solving puzzles and not emoting is so much better for constructing a piece of music. Also, it just makes your day better and also makes you easier to be around. I know it's from experience. and so what I would say, this is just as a small idea, but then you can extrapolate this to a bigger goal, is that you start at 8 in the morning and you decide you're going to write a piece that is a minute long or less. It can't be longer than a minute, period. Then you're going to choose, let's say, 5 notes on the piano. Just choose any 5 notes. They can be, you can spell out your name and you can make them meaningful if you like, or these 5 notes you like from this, but just choose 5 notes. And those are the only 5 notes you get to use. All right. Then ideally within your little minute long piece, you actually start to do that kind of micro, that golden brick thing that I was telling you about, right? So if you've got 5 notes, then maybe you're basing things on leaps of a fifth, or 5-bar phrases, or 5-second phrases, or you know what I mean? Like the whole thing is just somehow infused with that single idea. Now, the reason that you're going to make it a minute or less is because you need to be finished by midnight. And then when it's done at midnight, you're going to upload it to Instagram. And that's why it has to be a minute or less, right? Because you can put a minute-long video up there before it goes into Reels or whatever. So now what you've done is you've not only made all of these decisions during the day, you've actually finished a thing, which is the hardest part of composing by far, right? Is just finishing the damn thing. And then you upload it, and by uploading it, you release it. It's out there. It can't be, you can't fix it anymore. You can't work on it. You release it, and then you do it over again. That's a real small microcosm, right, of what you're going to do. But my God, I wish somebody would have told me that early on. I think you will learn so much about yourself and about what you like and how you think about music. And you'll also activate this different part of your brain. And then you also said very sweetly, you said that, how do you become a famous composer? So in my experience, I would say that's not up to you. And in fact, you really can't even plan for that. But this is important to say, so that don't even think about the career or the impact or any of that. Think only about the music and the integrity of the music. And the integrity can't just be how well it's put together, but also how deeply you feel about it. And this is where composition gets really hard, because at some point you have to get incredibly honest. You have to put on the page your worldview. After a while, you can't hide anymore. Or if you do hide, people can feel that you're hiding. They don't really engage with the music. But in my experience, if you're just as genuine and authentic as you possibly can be, then it's like an arrow to the heart. That if it's performed well, then the listener sits there and just thunk, because it's true. It's true, right? That's the whole goal. Then in my experience, if you're writing music that's true, it's going to find its way to the top, like just cream. It'll somehow, people will just tell other people. It's like, did you hear this? Right? And then career schmishmigger. Then you don't ever have to get a real job. I hope that helps, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck, truly.
Thank you.
So chamber choir is about to start working on Sing Gently, probably them and every Zoom choir in the world. And you're sort of before that, the Sacred Veil just came out. I have all of that. I haven't even played through it yet, but I know I'm going to like it because I like your music. But I have to ask you about working with Grant, and tell a quick little story. Grant and I go way back. We were in school together. In fact, Grant, I was TA for the USC Chamber Choir, and Grant came in to audition. And, if you can imagine Grant like 25 years ago, he looked like he was 12. It was like, this kid should be under parental supervision somewhere. And he came in and he was standing next to me, and he started singing. And I was just floored. I mean, he doesn't think of himself as a singer. He's a really good singer. I mean, perfect pitch and all the musicianship, but a hell of a voice, honestly. And I actually hired him during the audition to be the tenor section leader at my church. Like when the conductor was doing something, I said, "Do you have a church job?" And he said, "No." I said, "You do now." And it's just been, and he's just such a, I mean, I'd love to hear what that was. I mean, that choir is phenomenal. And have your music done by groups like that, it's got to be a thrill.
Yeah, it's you said it best. It's a thrill, and yeah, it was. I spent 4 years with the Master Chorale and with Grant, and I feel like I grew exponentially as a musician, being around him and being around them, and the kind of music that I ended up writing was wildly different. Like I wrote this Christmas piece called "The Boy Who Laughed at Santa Claus," which is just this
God,
insane.
I have it.
Oh, do you? Yeah. So it's
Yeah, I've got it all.
this piece. It's like Danny Elfman meets Mendelssohn or something.
Yeah.
It eats itself. And then I wrote a little chamber opera for them called "On the Gift of the Magi" and the Christmas Story. And then I wrote "The Sacred Veil," which is it's probably the most honest thing I've ever written. It's certainly the biggest. It's nearly an hour long, and yeah. So and all of that is to say, I couldn't have done any of that without some conductors get very possessive of their group. They built them from the ground up, and they want to always be in the driver's seat. And Grant, beyond graciousness, just let me, like a kid in a candy store, go play with them. With the Sacred Veil, he gave me not only the performances, but all 6 rehearsals. He didn't even come. He's like, just, it's your group, do it. And having the opportunity to work with musicians at that level and make music with them, it was extraordinary. I will say one other thing about Grant that I'm only now realizing I adopted while I was there. Grant has this way of leading. I don't know if he was like this in school. That is the only way I could describe it would be soft power.
Mm-hmm.
That Grant somehow not only leads rehearsals, but is building this entire organization. And he has been for the past 20 years. And I think to an outside observer, you wouldn't necessarily even know that Grant was in charge. You would think, who's driving the ship? It just kind of seems to unfold and do its thing. And Grant is pleasant and lovely and an amazing musician. But then as I've watched him over the years, I've realized that Grant is not only driving, he's driving with intention. But it's just this beautiful way with respect and tenderness that he leads people without them even really knowing that they're being led. He unifies as a group of people. And I didn't have this at all in my vocabulary before I came to work with Grant. And I feel now like going forward, I'll try more of that soft leadership, if you know what I mean.
Well, he wants to make the world better. And it's starting with where he works and those people. And I'm intrigued by you saying this is the most honest thing you've written. I wonder, we've got a couple minutes left. Why did you say that?
So I'll try to be as brief as possible. The piece, The Sacred Veil, was written with Charles Anthony Silvestri, who, besides being my best friend for the past 30 years, we met in college choir in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wrote the poetry for Luxurumque and Sleep and Leonardo Dreams and
Right.
such. We've done all these pieces together. And 15 years ago, he lost his wife, Julie, to ovarian cancer. She was only 36 at the time and left behind a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And over the years, Tony and I, over I don't know how many bottles of wine and just floods and floods of tears, he's tried to process it, and I basically just tried to be a friend and hear him and be there for him. And then nearly 5 years ago, he wrote what is now the first movement of Sacred Veil. It's 12 movements, but he wrote this first movement and didn't mean it in any way that it was going to be a thing we would write or that he was writing it for me, but he wrote the poem and then just left it sitting on my piano. He was staying with me in Los Angeles for a couple of days. And I came out in the morning and I sat at the piano and looked at this thing. And by the time he'd gotten home in the afternoon, I'd set most of it to music. And I said to him, I think there's a much, much bigger piece here if you want to do this. We talked for years about how to express this and how to work through it, maybe through music or creating something. And so the piece it starts with that first movement, and then it tells Tony and Julie, his wife, it tells their story. And from the moment that they first fell in love and had children, to the diagnosis itself, to struggling with cancer, having her hair shaved. 3 of the movements are her words. She was writing blogs at the time and poetry, and so we use those for 3 movements. I wrote 2 of the movements, the words to them. And finally, to wrap this up, it's just that how to say this. So, a boy and a girl, to me, as just as a comparison, because we're talking about that piece, is a snow globe. It's this perfect little universe that just has all its own governing rules, and everything in there, even though it's sweet and melancholy and even bittersweet, maybe it all just goes up on a shelf and it's there. The thing that happened to Tony and that I witnessed from the outside, it's not a snow globe. It's very, very real, and it's this kind of grief that rips open a life and doesn't go back together again. You know, I think watching Tony, and especially as he created this piece and we created it together, I realized that some scar tissue happens, but actually just grief is now the way you move through life. That's now a part of who you are, is with this essential grief. And I found the only way to really write that, to get that onto the page, was to be unflinchingly honest. And Tony's poetry it's not adorned, it's not dazzling, it's not trying to elicit emotions. It just is what happened. And then with the music, I tried to be as simple and direct as I possibly could. Just, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Just do what it needs to do. And I think what we ended up making was, as I say, just something, it's kind of a new level of honesty for me. It'd be really interesting to see what happens over the next years now that I've kind of opened that door.
I can't wait to play it through. I'm hearing from the chat that Lori Hunter has a quick question. Maybe we'll close with this, Lori.
Okay, hi. So initially at the beginning of the talk, you were talking about, your naivete at Juilliard, and my original question was, well, how did you get from there to where you are, as a well-known composer? Did you have a first big break? I was thinking maybe our students might be interested in sort of, well, how do you get yourself kind of started down that path? The other question I don't think we'll get to, but just how you've managed to maintain the balance between when your passion becomes your profession. Sometimes the work part of it can dim the passion, and how do you keep that alive?
It's great questions. And are you all able to go a few minutes over? I certainly am, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I guess if anybody needs to leave, then. So. There's the movie version of how I became a professional composer, and then there's the real version, right? So the movie version is that I started writing music as an undergrad, and the music got shared around by conductors. This is a true part of the story, but it's very movie-like. That in my 7th year of my undergraduate degree, my grades were so bad that I was told by my advisors there was no grad school in the country that would accept me. And so I applied to the only school that would accept my application without a GPA, and that was the Juilliard School. It's the only place I applied. So that's the only reason I went there, is because nobody else apparently would accept my application. And so that's kind of the movie version. But there's this version that I can tell where it all kind of rolls out, and even like when I was saying to Matt, well, you just write music that is authentic and moves you, and other people will be moved, and then your career will find itself. That's a bit of the movie version. The thing is, it's true, right? But it's just part of the truth. The other part, if I'm being totally honest, is I hustled and hustled and hustled, and I still hustle to this day. That rejection is it's the first and the last word you hear in your day as an artist. Still today, of all the projects I have going, I'm being rejected endlessly by orchestras that I want to work with, by festivals I want to go to, the deals I'm trying to put together. It's just how it's a life in the arts, right? And by hustling in a very specific way, in my world, it meant getting to the gatekeepers. And the gatekeepers in classical music are the conductors, right? They're the ones who are like, for instance, Paul, he's the one who's going to decide what you're all going to sing. And so what I would do is I would meet every chance I could with a conductor and bring my scores, or I tried to get good recordings. I went into crazy debt when I got out of school, buying recordings, like making recordings with choirs. I would pay for them on credit cards just so that I had good recordings. I took a big chance on it. I stumbled my way through music publishing, and what the best way to do that is, I joked before about my copyrights, but everything that I wrote before 2001 is, I gave the copyrights away, not even knowing what I was doing or thinking that I was parlaying them, that if they were published, then it would look like I was an established composer and then more people would want to perform the music. But by giving away the copyrights, I gave them away for the rest, well, till 75 years after my death, at which time they become public domain. They're not mine anymore. They have my name on them, but I just get a royalty check. They're not controlled by me at all. So I made mistake after mistake, just trying to stumble my way into it. I wouldn't say there was a single big break. There was lots and lots and lots of little breaks, and every single one of them was some mentor giving me a chance, some mentor believing in me. And so I saw, of all things, a speech the other day that Arnold Schwarzenegger was giving, and he said he gets angry when people call him a self-made man, because no, I'm not a self-made man. There's all these men and women who made me, who gave me these opportunities, who believed in me. And in terms of speaking to students, the only advice I ever heard that really seems to resonate is that whatever you want to do, get as close as you can to the fire as possible. So for instance, if you want to score movies, if you want to be a film composer, you've got to move to Los Angeles. And ideally, find the composer whose music you love, let's say Hans Zimmer, and just go and knock on his door and tell him, I will serve coffee for the next year, and just get as close to the fire as you can, right? If you want to be a professional opera singer, you've got to be at an opera house, even if you're making copies, even if you're carrying people's suitcases, just get close, get close. That has always served me well. I don't know, I'm rambling a bit, but I don't know, maybe some of that helps. Especially for students to know that there is no path. There's not a thing that you check off that I would do this, then I do this, then I do this. Now it's, and by the way, if I'm being totally honest, as long as we're all here, my career right now is in shambles. So nobody is commissioning. Every single commission I had not only stopped, I had a commission with National Symphony. The National Symphony doesn't even exist anymore. Every conducting gig I had for the next 18 months, gone, just off the books. I've never had a calendar that is just empty like this. I also am a speaker, so I do corporate talks, and this was all because I did a TED talk, and then I kind of got on that speaker circuit. Gone, every single one of them. So I'm literally not making any money right now. It just stopped. Also, sales of sheet music, I used to count on royalties. Zero. Like, who's buying sheet music? So it's also good for people to know it's not all like wine and roses, right? But my guiding ethos always was, well, I don't have a choice. This is what I do. So I'm in. I'm in it to win it. And the joke that I always tell myself is, I'll do anything to keep from having a real job. so whatever it takes to not have a real job, I'm going to keep doing it. I don't know if that helps. Maybe just seeing like kind of that it's messy. It's super messy. But you can just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually something's going to happen. And then the other part of your question, Lori, which was how to balance. Tell me again what the question was.
Well, I said balancing the passion with the profession, basically, where the weight of whether it's deadlines or whether it's when you're doing something over and over and over again, sometimes the magic goes out of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Remember what I was saying to Matt earlier, that that the hardest part about composing is you get in there and you have to be honest, right? You really have to be honest, and that's part of it too. Is like you say, the daily grind of making something. The thing is that if I'm being hyper honest, my kryptonite is expectation. So I'm a pleaser. I'm the first child. I always want to do right by my mom and dad. My dad can never be proud enough, that kind of thing. And then because of that, each new success I have in my field, the expectation gets hotter and hotter and hotter, right? So now it's not just me, oh, I'll try writing a little piece and I'll put it out there. It feels like the magnifying glass is really intense. And for my personality, for my particular set of weaknesses, that's not a good thing. So I get paralyzed by, oh my God, I'm not going to deliver what everyone is expecting me to deliver, right? This piece must change the world, even if it's just the seal lullaby. I have to save seals. I don't know what it's like. It's just got too much pressure on it, the piece. And so what I found is partly doing what I was saying to Matt, which is try to remove myself from the emotional hurricane and just problem solve. Just this. But then the other thing I've discovered is that if I'm there in the music still after all these years and I'm looking, and then finally something clicks and I find that little golden brick, it's that dragon that I've been chasing for 30 years, right? It's still just as good, just as sweet, just as strong. And that just propels me forward, just keeps. So I guess it's a bit like an adrenaline junkie, right? The sweetness of those little hits far outweighs the bitterness of all the rest of it.
I think that might be a good place for us to wrap up here. But before I do, I think I just heard you say you had a lot of blank time on your calendar, and I'm surrounded here by my friends. So I'm just going to say, would this be a good time to ask for a commission?
Thank you, Paul. So we could certainly talk about it. I will now tell you the other honest part is I have no inspiration. Like it's just dry right now. I don't know what to write. Sing Gently was so good for me because there was a cause, there was a purpose, a service that I could, let's do this all together and let's make this thing for this moment.
Yeah.
But I have this weird thing where if I'm writing for a group, like say I was writing for your group, I would come and visit with you before I wrote a note of music. Because for me, it's never an alto line. It's those 5 people right there, those faces. That's who I'm seeing when I write something. So
yeah.
The Master Chorale is because then I was writing for these individuals who a lot of them became friends.
Yeah.
And now in my mind, there's just nobody's singing, and so it's what am I writing? I can't. There's just no blood going to the muscle, if you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah. Well, we're all feeling that. Well, we'll come back to that because you like Ashland and you would like these singers. These are really good singers. So
well, regardless, let's say this, that the moment we can all do this, I'll come up to Ashland and let's do a concert or something.
Okay.
I'll be in a heartbeat.
Well, let me just say for everyone, we have loved your music for a long time, and you are a lovely person. Now we love you as well, and it would be wonderful to get together sometime. But regardless, please know that this was a very meaningful time for us, and God bless. We just all got to hang tough and make the beauty, keep making the beauty happen when we get a chance. Amen. Like your lovely rose, it's sort of in hibernation, but it's going to grow again.
Paul, do you write poetry?
No, you do though.
I think you should start. If you don't, there must be. Come on, you speak poetry.
I have a big passion. I have a pretty high feelings threshold, and I like you do. I want to make things as beautiful around me as I can. So
at the risk of cacophony, I'm going to ask everybody to unmute, and so you can all say your thank yous. There's lots of great thank yous in the chat, and I offer my thank you to you, Eric, for just your heartfelt words, your profound sharing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. Love your music.
Thank you.
It's incredible. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.